The day Earth changed forever began like any other aboard the Earth Alliance vessel Horizon. Lieutenant John Carter stood at his tactical station, watching the stars through the bridge's viewport. The ship had been patrolling the outer edge of human space for 3 months, and the crew was eager to return home. "Lieutenant, I'm picking up unusual energy readings," said the sensor operator. "Nothing in our database matches the signature." John leaned forward, studying the readout. "Alert, the Admiral." Within minutes, Admiral Lisa Bennett arrived on the bridge, her expression serious but calm. At 53, she had seen humanity push into space with remarkable speed, but nothing had prepared her for what appeared on the main screen. A massive ship, unlike anything humans had built, emerged from what looked like a tear in space itself. Its hull shimmered with an iridescent material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Open communications on all frequencies," ordered Admiral Bennett, "and inform Earth Command immediately." 3 more ships appeared, forming a perfect triangle around the first. Each was easily 5 times the size of the Horizon. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission," said the communications officer. "It's translating itself into English?" The main screen flickered, revealing a tall, slender being with mottled blue skin and 4 eyes positioned in a diamond pattern. It wore what appeared to be ceremonial robes adorned with intricate patterns. "Greetings, humans of Earth. I am Zorvac, diplomatic envoy of the Galactic Concordat. We have been observing your civilization for some time and believe you are ready for formal contact." Admiral Bennett straightened her uniform. 20 years in Earth's Navy had not prepared her for first contact, but she maintained her composure. "On behalf of Earth and all humanity, we welcome you. I am Admiral Lisa Bennett of the Earth Alliance." The being called Zorvac tilted its head. "We request permission to send a delegation to your vessel for preliminary discussions." Within the HFY hour, the Horizon's conference room hosted beings from 4 different species. Zorvac led the delegation, accompanied by representatives that resembled a lizard-like humanoid, a floating jellyfish-like creature, and a stocky being with rock-like skin. "The Concordat encompasses 27 spacefaring species," explained Zorvac. "We maintain peace and order throughout this sector of the galaxy." "We're honored to make your acquaintance," said Admiral Bennett. "Earth is still new to interstellar travel. We've only achieved faster-than-light capability in the last 50 years. The rock-like being made a sound that the translator rendered as surprise. 50 years? From planetary travel to FTL in merely 50 years? Our records indicate your species was still using combustion engines and primitive electronics merely 2 centuries ago," said the lizard-like diplomat. "Such rapid advancement is unprecedented." Lieutenant John Carter, standing guard near the door, noticed how the aliens exchanged glances. He had been trained to recognize tension, and despite their alien features, he could see they were unsettled. The talks continued for hours. Earth's representatives, including scientists and politicians who had been shuttled up from the planet's surface, were eager to learn about the wider galaxy. The Concordat representatives seemed equally curious about humans, though their questions often focused on Earth's military capabilities and resource consumption. By the 3rd day of negotiations, Admiral Bennett had invited the Concordat representatives to Earth itself. A grand reception was held in the United Nations headquarters in New York. "We formally request admission to the Galactic Concordat," announced the Earth President to Zorvac and the other delegates. "And we seek unrestricted travel rights throughout Concordat space." Zorvac's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Unrestricted travel is not granted to new member species. There is a probationary period of at least 100 years. The human diplomats frowned. "That seems excessive," said one. "Surely we can negotiate a shorter time frame." "The protocols have served us for 12,000 years, said the rock-like diplomat firmly. "They are not open to negotiation." John Carter, now assigned to the security detail for the Earth delegation, observed as the tension in the room grew. The human negotiators pressed harder, arguing that Earth's ships had already explored beyond the immediate solar system, and restricting human movement would be impractical. "Perhaps we should discuss this further," said Zorvac, rising from the table. "We must consult with the Concordat Council." As the alien delegation moved to leave, one of the human diplomats reached out to touch Zorvac's arm, a friendly gesture by human standards. The reaction was instant. The jellyfish-like creature emitted a high-pitched sound, and the Concordat security team drew weapons. "No physical contact!" shouted the lizard diplomat. The human security team, seeing alien weapons drawn, responded, in kind. Sergeant Maria Rivera and her Marines formed a protective line in front of the Earth delegates. "Lower your weapons," commanded Admiral Bennett. "This is a misunderstanding." But it was too late. A nervous Concordat guard fired what appeared to be a stun bolt, hitting one of the human diplomats. The room erupted into chaos. Lieutenant Carter assessed the situation in seconds. The human delegation was outnumbered, and the exits were blocked by Concordat security. Without hesitation, he grabbed a decorative metal sphere from a nearby table and threw it at the room's sprinkler system. Water rained down, causing the jellyfish-like alien to convulse in apparent distress. In the confusion, John shouted to Sergeant Rivera, "The eastern windows, they're only force-shielded against entry, not exit." Rivera nodded, understanding immediately. "Marines, defensive formation Alpha, move toward the windows." The human delegation backed toward the windows as the Marines provided cover. Carter found the environmental controls and increased the room's gravity by 30%, something that barely affected the humans who had evolved on a higher gravity world, but sent the alien delegates staggering. "Now!" shouted Carter, though Marines fired precisely at the window controls, deactivating the shields. The human delegation escaped onto the wide ledge outside, where emergency transport shuttles were already moving into position, alerted by the building's security systems. As they boarded the shuttles, Admiral Bennett looked back to see Zorvac watching them, all four eyes blinking rapidly in what might have been shock or admiration. Once safely aboard the Horizon, which had moved to a defensive position in Earth orbit, Admiral Bennett called an emergency meeting. "They didn't expect us to react that way," said Lieutenant Carter. "Did you see their faces? They were completely surprised by our escape." "Their security protocols were rigid," added Sergeant Rivera. "They had no contingency for improvisation." Admiral Bennett nodded slowly. "I think we've just discovered something important about our new galactic neighbors. They don't understand unpredictability." Within hours, the Concordat ships had retreated to the edge of the solar system. Communications remained open but tense. Earth began mobilizing its fleets, unsure if they had just made friends or enemies. On the Concordat command ship, Zorvac reviewed the recordings of the humans' escape. How did they coordinate so quickly, with no apparent signals? "They are dangerous," said the rock-like diplomat. "No species has ever advanced so quickly, and now we see they are reckless as well." Zorvac wasn't so sure. What the others called recklessness, the diplomat recognized as something else, something the ordered Concordat had not faced in thousands of years. True adaptability. "Alert the Council," Zorvac said finally. "Tell them we have encountered the unpredictable variable." 3 weeks after the failed diplomatic meeting, Earth was on high alert. Military ships patrolled the solar system, and civilian space traffic was restricted. In a secure underground facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Alan Parker worked tirelessly to understand their new galactic neighbors. Dr. Parker was a xenobiologist with shaggy brown hair and tired eyes. He hadn't slept properly since the incident. Surrounded by screens displaying alien anatomical diagrams, he rubbed his temples and sipped cold coffee. "Their brain structures suggest highly developed pattern recognition," he explained to the military officers gathered around the table. "But there's something rigid about their neural pathways." Admiral Bennett leaned forward. "What exactly does that mean, Doctor?" "It means they think differently than we do. These species evolved with extreme preservation instincts. They don't take risks unless absolutely necessary." He pointed to a brain scan. "Look at the Zorvac species. Their fear response dominates decision-making. They plan extensively and follow those plans strictly. That would explain their reaction when we improvised our escape," said Lieutenant Carter, who had been asked to join the analysis team after his quick thinking during the incident. Dr. Parker nodded. Exactly. What we consider normal adaptability, they see as chaos. At the far end of the table sat Sam Rodriguez, a young intelligence analyst with uncombed hair and wrinkled clothes. While the others discussed alien psychology, Sam was engrossed in something on his tablet. "What have you got there, Rodriguez?" asked Admiral Bennett. Sam looked up, slightly startled. "I've been studying the formation patterns of their ships, ma'am. They maintain perfect geometric arrangements even during the confusion of our escape. It's like watching a computer simulation." He slid his tablet to the center of the table. "Their ships never break formation, even when it would be tactically advantageous." "You're saying they prioritize order over effectiveness?" Lieutenant Carter asked. "Precisely. They're predictable, and in war, predictability is a weakness." Meanwhile, billions of miles away, the Concordat War Council had assembled on their massive flagship. Representatives from 7 species sat around a circular table, with Grelnak, the Concordat's most respected military strategist, standing at the center. Grelnak was tall and thin with gray skin that stretched tightly over sharp facial features. 6 fingers on each hand moved rapidly as he manipulated a holographic display showing Earth's solar system. "The humans possess only 43 warships capable of faster-than-light travel," Grelnak stated. "Their weapons technology is primitive compared to ours. By all measurable standards, they should be an insignificant threat." "Yet you seem troubled," observed one of the council members. Grelnak's eyes narrowed. "They are unpredictable. Our simulations cannot accurately model their response patterns." He replayed the footage from the diplomatic incident. "Observe how quickly they improvise. No signals, no predetermined protocol. They simply adapt." "Perhaps we should establish communication again," suggested a jellyfish-like council member. "Unpredictability does not necessarily mean hostility." "I advise caution," Grelnak replied. "We should probe their defenses first, understand how they fight." The council agreed to send a small fleet to test Earth's military response. What they didn't know was that humans were already testing them. Captain Diane Howard stood on the bridge of the Shadow Dancer, Earth's newest stealth reconnaissance ship. The vessel was designed to be nearly invisible to sensors using technology that bent light around its hull. It was currently deep in what they now knew was Concordat space. "Steady as she goes," Captain Howard whispered, even though the alien ships nearby couldn't possibly hear her. She was a tall woman with dark skin and closely cropped hair, known for her cool head under pressure. The Shadow Dancer drifted silently past a Concordat outpost, recording everything its sensors could detect. Captain Howard's mission was simple but dangerous. Gather as much intelligence as possible about Concordat technology and tactics. "Their patrol patterns are perfect," observed her navigation officer. "Every ship follows the exact same course, at the exact same speed exactly 6 minutes apart." Captain Howard smiled slightly. "Perfect means predictable. Log the pattern and continue on course." For 2 weeks, the Shadow Dancer collected data from 3 different Concordat systems before returning to Earth space. The information they gathered proved invaluable when the Concordat probe finally came. 7 Concordat warships emerged from faster-than-light travel near Jupiter. They arranged themselves in a perfect V formation and proceeded toward Earth at a measured pace. Earth's defense fleet, consisting of just 5 ships, formed up to meet them. But instead of arranging in a standard formation, each Earth ship took a seemingly random position. On the Concordat command ship, Grelnak watched with growing frustration. "What formation is this? It follows no tactical logic." The Earth ships began to move, each one following an erratic course that made predicting their next position impossible. When the Concordat fleet fired their weapons, the Earth ships were already elsewhere. Admiral Bennett, commanding the Earth fleet from her flagship, smiled grimly as she watched the battle unfold. "Execute Maneuver Chaos 3, she ordered. The Earth ships suddenly accelerated at different angles, confusing the Concordat targeting systems. Then they regrouped just as quickly and launched a coordinated attack that disabled one of the alien vessels. Grelnak couldn't believe what he was seeing. The humans were fighting like no species the Concordat had ever encountered. They seemed to communicate without signals, change tactics without warning, and take risks that defied logical analysis. After losing 2 ships and damaging only 1 Earth vessel, the Concordat fleet retreated. Back on Earth in the war room beneath the Rocky Mountains, Sam Rodriguez was ecstatic. It worked. Their ships tried to maintain perfect formation even when it made them vulnerable. Dr. Parker nodded thoughtfully. Their evolutionary psychology works against them. They value order above all else, while humans thrive in chaos, finished Admiral Bennett. In another part of the facility, Dr. Parker continued his research with renewed urgency. He believed understanding alien psychology was the key to ending the conflict before it escalated further. Most species in the Concordat evolved from prey animals or herd creatures, he explained to his team. Their survival depended on sticking together and following established patterns. Humans, on the other hand, evolved as adaptable omnivores. We had to be unpredictable to survive. On the Concordat flagship, Grelnak had reached a similar conclusion, though it troubled him deeply. He stood alone in his quarters, reviewing the battle footage for the 20th time. They are the unpredictable variable, he muttered to himself. In all our calculations, in all our perfect order, they are the one thing we cannot account for. He had never failed before. The Concordat had conquered or assimilated every species they had encountered for 12,000 years. The thought of being unable to predict an enemy's actions was more than frustrating. It was terrifying. Grelnak made a decision. He would study humans more closely, understand their chaos, and find the pattern that must exist beneath it. The Concordat's perfect order would prevail. It had to. What neither side fully realized yet was that this conflict was unlike any other in galactic history. It wasn't just a clash of technologies or resources. It was a fundamental collision between 2 entirely different ways of thinking. And as both sides prepared for the next engagement, the galaxy watched with growing interest. Because if there was one thing more frightening than humanity's unpredictability, it was the possibility that they might win. The war between humanity and the Galactic Concordat had been raging for 6 months. What began as a diplomatic misunderstanding had escalated into a conflict spanning dozens of star systems. The Concordat, with its vastly superior numbers and technology, should have crushed Earth's forces quickly. Instead, the alien alliance found itself increasingly frustrated by humanity's unorthodox tactics. On the jungle moon of Proxima Centauri's 4th planet, Major Ben Collins and his special operations team crouched in the underbrush, watching an alien supply depot through binoculars. Major Collins was a stocky man with a weather-beaten face and steady hands. He had been fighting behind enemy lines for 3 months. "Their patrol patterns haven't changed," whispered Sergeant Lily Gomez, his second-in-command. "Exactly 7 minutes between each circuit." Major Collins nodded. "They never learn." He checked his watch. "Team 2 should be in position. We move in 60 seconds. The human soldiers advanced silently through the dense vegetation. The alien guards, tall insectoid creatures with compound eyes, continued their perfectly timed patrols, never varying their routes by even a few feet. Collins's team set explosives at key points around the depot, while another team created a distraction on the opposite side. When the charges detonated, the alien response was exactly as predicted. They followed their emergency protocols to the letter, evacuating in precise formations that made them easy targets. Within 20 minutes, the humans had destroyed the depot and disappeared back into the jungle, leaving confused alien reinforcements to arrive at an empty, burning shell. Similar scenarios were playing out across human Concordat battle lines. The aliens had superior firepower and numbers, but they couldn't adapt to humanity's guerrilla tactics and unpredictable strategies. On Earth, Vice Admiral Patricia Wright stood before a holographic display of the war zone in the Strategic Command Center. A tall woman with silver-streaked black hair pulled into a tight bun. She had become the architect of Earth's defensive strategy. "The Concordat has finally adapted to our chaotic formation shifts," she explained to the assembled military leaders. "They're developing algorithms to predict our movements." "So our advantage is disappearing?" asked a general. Vice Admiral Wright smiled slightly. No, it just means we need to become even more unpredictable. She manipulated the holographic display, showing a new formation. I call this the civilian shuffle. We'll disguise our warships as merchant vessels and hide them among actual civilian ships. The room erupted in concerned voices. That puts civilians at risk, objected one admiral. The civilian ships will be evacuated and operated remotely, Wright clarified. But the Concordat won't know that. They'll hesitate to fire on potential civilian targets, giving us the advantage of surprise. On the experimental battlecruiser, Defiance Commander Kyle Jackson stood on the bridge, watching his crew prepare for an especially risky mission. The Defiance represented the pinnacle of human ingenuity, a ship designed specifically to counter Concordat tactics. All systems are ready, Commander, reported his first officer. Commander Jackson nodded. He was younger than most officers of his rank, with keen eyes that missed nothing. Take us in, engage the mimicry systems. The Defiance approached a Concordat blockade around the human colony on Enceladus. As it drew closer, the ship's external appearance began to change, its hull-mounted projectors creating the image of a Concordat patrol vessel. They're hailing us, said the communications officer. Respond with the identification codes we captured, ordered Jackson. For tense minutes, the Defiance continued its approach. Then the blockade parted, allowing them through. We're in, whispered the first officer. Jackson allowed himself a small smile. Now for the hard part. The Defiance suddenly dropped its disguise and accelerated toward the Concordat command ship. Before the aliens could react, the human vessel fired precisely targeted weapons at the flagship's engines. The Concordat ship scrambled to respond, but the Defiance was already executing an impossible maneuver, diving toward Enceladus at full speed, using the moon's gravity to slingshot around and attack from behind. No ship can make that turn at that speed, shouted the Concordat commander, watching in disbelief as the human vessel pulled G-forces that should have torn it apart. What the aliens didn't know was that the Defiance had been equipped with experimental inertial dampeners that allowed it to perform maneuvers no other ship could survive. By the time the Concordat fleet regrouped, 3 of their ships had been disabled and the Defiance had disappeared into Enceladus's ice geysers, using the water particles as cover. On the Concordat Central Command Station, Supreme Commander Zexel paced angrily. He was from a species known for logical thinking and mathematical precision, with a tall, thin body and skin that changed color with his emotions, currently a deep red of frustration. How is it possible? He demanded of his council. They are primitives. Their technology is centuries behind ours, yet they continue to evade our forces and inflict disproportionate damage. Grelnak, who had been promoted to chief strategist, displayed the latest battle data. The humans do not fight according to any recognizable doctrine. Each commander seems free to improvise tactics based on the situation. Improvisation is chaos, snapped Zexel. Chaos cannot triumph over order. With respect, Supreme Commander, said Grelnak carefully. Evidence suggests otherwise. The Supreme Commander's skin darkened further. Then we must create order from their chaos. I want a complete algorithm that can predict human behavior patterns. Use all available computing resources. Grelnak bowed, but privately doubted such an algorithm could be created. The humans seemed to pride themselves on being unpredictable. In fact, they appeared to be weaponizing that very unpredictability. Reports had begun to circulate among Concordat forces about human unpredictability. Some younger species in the Alliance had begun questioning the wisdom of fighting humans at all. The conflict that should have been a simple disciplinary action against an upstart species was becoming a full-scale war that the Concordat had not planned for. Back on Earth, Major Collins and his team had returned from their mission with valuable intelligence. In the strategy room, they reported directly to Vice Admiral Wright. The Concordat is starting to come apart, Collins explained. The younger species are questioning the war. They're frightened of us. Frightened? Of humans? Wright seemed surprised. Yes, ma'am. They're calling us the unpredictable ones or chaos bringers. There are rumors spreading that we're immune to their weapons or can read their minds. Collins smiled slightly. Our reputation is becoming a weapon in itself. Vice Admiral Wright considered this information carefully. Then perhaps it's time to use psychological warfare more directly. She outlined a new strategy where human ships would appear and disappear at random throughout concordate space, never engaging in major battles, but creating the impression that humans could strike anywhere, anytime. On the concordate homeworld, a secret meeting was taking place among representatives of several member species. They spoke in hushed tones about the mounting casualties and the Supreme Commander's increasingly erratic orders. The humans have offered peace terms 3 times, said one delegate. Perhaps we should consider them. Zexel will never agree, replied another. He has become obsessed with defeating the humans completely. Then perhaps Zexel should no longer lead this war. The suggestion hung in the air, dangerous and unprecedented. In 12,000 years, the Concordate had never removed a Supreme Commander during wartime. As both sides prepared for the next phase of the conflict, one thing became increasingly clear. The war would not be decided by technology or numbers, but by adaptability and the willingness to embrace the unexpected. And in that arena, humanity remained the galaxy's most unpredictable force. 1 year into the war, humanity faced its greatest challenge yet. Intelligence reports confirmed what Earth's military leaders had feared. The Concordate was preparing a massive assault on Earth itself. Their goal was to end the conflict by striking directly at humanity's homeworld. In the main war room beneath Mount Cheyenne, Admiral William Francis studied the holographic display showing the approaching Concordate armada. He was an older man with weathered features and calm, steady eyes that had seen countless battles. They've committed nearly 40% of their total fleet strength, he noted. Over 300 warships. Vice Admiral Wright nodded grimly. Our total defensive force is 78 ships. Even with our tactical advantages, those numbers are overwhelming. The room fell silent as the military leaders contemplated their options. Earth had surprised the Concordate repeatedly with unconventional tactics, but this time the aliens were coming with overwhelming force. What about the Chaos Engine? Asked Admiral Francis, turning to look at Dr. Nicole Ellis, who stood quietly at the edge of the room. Dr. Ellis was a brilliant programmer with short red hair and intense green eyes. She had spent the past 6 months developing an artificial intelligence unlike any other. It's ready, she said, stepping forward. But I must emphasize that the Chaos Engine is unpredictable by design. Even I cannot anticipate what strategies it might develop. That's precisely what we need, said Admiral Francis. The Concordate has begun to adapt to our unpredictability. We need to become even more unpredictable. Dr. Ellis nodded and activated her tablet. A swirling pattern of light appeared above the holographic display of Earth's defenses. The Chaos Engine analyzes battle situations not through traditional military doctrine, but through chaos theory and quantum probability, she explained. It generates strategies that seem random, but actually exploit patterns too complex for either humans or the Concordate to recognize. The AI began rearranging Earth's defensive fleet into a formation that made no apparent sense. Ships were positioned in seemingly vulnerable locations, while key defensive positions were left with minimal coverage. Admiral Francis studied the strange arrangement with a mixture of concern and fascination. Are you certain about this, Doctor? No, Dr. Ellis admitted honestly. That's the point. If we can't predict our own tactics, the Concordate certainly can't. After much debate, Earth's military command reluctantly accepted the Chaos Engine's strategy. Admiral Francis would lead the defense personally from his flagship, the Determination. As the Concordate fleet approached Earth's orbit, the human defenders took their positions according to the AI's seemingly illogical plan. The alien armada arranged itself in perfect geometric formations, beautiful and terrifying in their precision. They're hailing us, reported the communications officer on the Determination's bridge. Put them through, ordered Admiral Francis. The image of Supreme Commander Zexel appeared on the main screen, his skin shifting between colors of confidence and anger. Human forces, this conflict has gone on long enough. Your unpredictable nature has proven interesting, but ultimately futile. Surrender now, and your species will be permitted to continue under concordate supervision. Admiral Francis stood tall. We appreciate your concern for our welfare, Commander Zexel. However, we must decline your generous offer. Zexel's skin flushed dark. Then you leave us no choice. We have studied your tactics extensively. Your unpredictability is now predictable to us. The transmission ended, and the concordate fleet began its advance. As they approached, something unexpected happened. A small group of concordate ships near the edge of the formation suddenly broke away. Sir, those ships are transmitting on an open frequency, reported the communications officer. They're declaring neutrality in this conflict. On the bridge of one of the breakaway concordate vessels, Thelvak, an officer from one of the younger concordate species, had made a difficult decision. His people had joined the Concordat only 1,000 years ago, relatively recent by their standards, and they had never fully embraced the rigid hierarchy of the Alliance. This war is unjustified, Thelvak told his crew. The humans sought peaceful contact. They defended themselves when threatened. Now they face extinction for the crime of being different. His ship, along with 11 others from like-minded species, moved away from the main fleet. It wasn't enough to change the battle's outcome, but it sent a powerful message. Zexel raged at this betrayal but remained focused on the main objective. The concordate fleet advanced toward Earth, firing the first salvos at the seemingly disorganized human defenses. That's when the Chaos Engine's strategy revealed itself. The scattered human ships suddenly accelerated in unexpected vectors, creating confusion in the concordate targeting systems. Some human vessels appeared to retreat, drawing portions of the concordate fleet away from their perfect formation. They're trying to disrupt our formation, observed Grelnak on the concordate flagship. Standard response pattern would be to maintain formation integrity. Then do so, ordered Zexel. With respect, Supreme Commander, that may be exactly what they expect. Their formation makes no logical sense unless... Grelnak's eyes widened as he realized the trap. They're not defending Earth directly. They're letting us through specific corridors. Too late, Zexel realized that the human fleet had maneuvered the concordate armada into a complex three-dimensional maze. As the aliens maintained their rigid formations, they found themselves caught in prepared killing zones where Earth's planetary defense systems could target them with devastating efficiency. Meanwhile, on the surface of Earth near the lunar landing, Complex Private First Class Eric Miller gripped his rifle tightly. He was just 22 years old, with an ordinary face and ordinary courage. He and his platoon had been assigned to defend the facility against concordate ground forces that had managed to land despite the space battle raging overhead. "They're coming!" shouted his sergeant as the first wave of alien troops emerged from their landing craft. Eric and his fellow soldiers had been outnumbered 5-1, but they held a narrow passage that the aliens needed to capture to access Earth's main defense control center. The humans had prepared the battlefield with obstacles and traps that disrupted the aliens' perfect formations. Remember, Eric told himself as he fired at the advancing forces, they expect us to follow standard defensive protocols. Instead of staying in fixed positions, the human defenders constantly shifted, appearing to abandon strong points only to return moments later from unexpected angles. They fought not as a coordinated unit but as individuals working toward a common goal, each soldier making decisions based on the immediate situation. The concordate forces, trained to fight in perfect unison, struggled to adapt. Their commanders issued orders based on traditional battle doctrine, but by the time those orders reached the front lines, the situation had already changed. For 6 hours, Eric and his platoon held the passage against overwhelming odds. They suffered heavy casualties, but the aliens suffered more. When reinforcements finally arrived, only Eric and 7 others remained from his original platoon of 30. As he was being treated for his wounds, Eric looked up at the sky, where flashes of light marked the ongoing space battle. "Did we win?" he asked weakly. The medic followed his gaze. "It's not over yet, but they say we're holding." In space, the battle had reached a critical phase. The Chaos Engine continued to generate unpredictable tactics, but the Concordate's superior numbers were beginning to tell. Several Earth ships had been destroyed and others were heavily damaged. On the Determination, Admiral Francis received the news that the Concordat forces had broken through one of the defensive lines and were approaching Earth's atmosphere. Implement Chaos Strategy Omega, he ordered grimly. Across the battlefield, the remaining human ships suddenly broke off their individual engagements and regrouped into a tight formation. It was the opposite of their previous tactics, and it caught the Concordat completely by surprise. The human fleet accelerated directly toward the Concordat flagship, ignoring all other targets. It was a desperate gamble, sacrificing strategic position for a single decisive strike. Zexel watched in disbelief as the human ships approached. "They're being predictable at last," he said with satisfaction. "All ships concentrate fire on the approaching formation." But Grelnak sensed a trap. "Supreme Commander, this doesn't match any previous human tactic. I recommend we withdraw the flagship to a safer position." "Nonsense. They've finally abandoned their chaos and are making a conventional assault. This proves my point. Order will always triumph over chaos in the end." The human fleet absorbed terrible damage as it pushed through the Concordat defenses, losing ship after ship, but they pressed on with grim determination, closing the distance to the Concordat flagship. Thousands of small unmanned craft suddenly emerged from the human vessels. They had been disguised as debris from battle damage, and now they swarmed toward the Concordat flagship from all directions. The alien point defense systems couldn't track them all. Hundreds got through, attaching themselves to the flagship's hull. They weren't weapons, they were electronic warfare devices that broadcast contradictory commands throughout the, 2 months after the battle for Earth, an uneasy quiet had settled across the warfront. Both sides had suffered heavy losses. Earth's orbital defenses were severely damaged, and several major cities had been hit by debris from the space battle. The Concordat had lost nearly a third of their attack fleet and faced growing internal dissent from member species who questioned the war's purpose. In the Oval Office of the White House, President Laura Martinez sat at her desk, reviewing reports of the ongoing reconstruction efforts. She was a woman of medium height with streaks of gray in her dark hair, a reminder of the stress of leading humanity through its first interstellar war. Her intercom buzzed. "Madam President, General Okonkwo has arrived with the latest military assessment. Send him in," she replied. General Peter Okonkwo entered, carrying a tablet with the classified report. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a stern face that rarely revealed his thoughts. "The Concordat forces have pulled back to the edge of our solar system," he explained. "Intelligence suggests they're regrouping, but something unusual is happening. Nearly 40 of their ships have broken formation and are holding position separately from the main fleet." President Martinez frowned. "A new tactic? We don't think so. Intercepts indicate there's disagreement within their ranks about continuing the war." Before they could discuss further, another message came through. "Madam President, we're receiving a transmission from the Concordat. They're requesting to open diplomatic channels." President Martinez and General Okonkwo exchanged surprised glances. After 18 months of brutal conflict, this was unexpected. "Put it through to the secure conference room," the president ordered, "and contact Ambassador Chen immediately." An hour later, President Martinez sat at the head of the conference table with her key advisors as the transmission began. The screen showed a being they hadn't seen before, not Zexel or any of the previous Concordat leaders they had encountered. "I am Kavan, representing the Reformed Council of the Galactic Concordat," the alien said. Its skin was a mottled blue-green, and it had 4 arms arranged around a central torso. "We wish to discuss terms for ending this conflict." Ambassador Olivia Chen took the lead in the discussion. She was a skilled diplomat with decades of experience in international negotiations before first contact. "We welcome this opportunity for dialogue," she said carefully. "May I ask what became of Supreme Commander Zexel?" Kavan's upper limbs made a gesture they had learned indicated discomfort. "The former Supreme Commander has been relieved of duty. His inflexibility was deemed detrimental to the Concordat's future." General Okonkwo leaned forward. "Are we to understand this represents a change in the Concordat's position toward Earth?" "Yes," Kavan admitted. Many within our alliance have come to recognize that this conflict was unnecessary. Your species defends itself with remarkable effectiveness, but has never sought to expand the conflict beyond defensive actions. This suggests you are not the threat Zexel claimed. Over the next several days, negotiations proceeded cautiously. Ambassador Chen insisted that any peace agreement must recognize humanity's right to unrestricted travel and trade throughout the galaxy. The Concordate representatives, in turn, sought assurances that humans would respect Concordate territories and customs. During a break in the formal talks, Kavan approached Ambassador Chen in the garden outside the United Nations building, where the negotiations had moved. "There is something I wish to understand," Kavan said. "Why do humans fight the way you do? Without patterns, without predictability?" Ambassador Chen considered the question carefully. "It's part of our evolutionary history. Humans evolved on a planet with many predators and changing environments. Those who could adapt quickly survived. But your military has no central doctrine, no fixed protocols. We have training and basic principles, but we value individual initiative and adaptation above rigid adherence to rules." Kavan seemed troubled by this. "In the Concordate, we believe order is the foundation of civilization. Chaos leads to destruction." "We see it differently," Chen explained. "We believe that too much order leads to stagnation. A certain amount of chaos drives innovation." This conversation proved to be a turning point in the negotiations. Kavan and the other Concordate representatives began to realize that humanity's unpredictability wasn't merely a military tactic, it was fundamental to human nature and society. A week later, in a formal ceremony at the United Nations, President Martinez and Kavan signed the Earth Concordate Peace Treaty. The agreement recognized Earth as an independent power and granted humans full travel rights throughout Concordate space. In return, humanity agreed to share certain technological innovations and to help establish a new defensive alliance against threats from beyond known space. As they signed the documents, Kavan made a surprising admission. "We have existed for 12,000 years without meaningful change. In just 18 months, your species has forced us to adapt more than we have in millennia." President Martinez nodded. "Change can be difficult, but necessary." "There is something else you should know," Kavan added. "The Concordate scientists have been studying your species extensively. We've never before encountered beings who evolved through predator-prey competition as yours did. Most spacefaring species evolved from herd animals or specialized ecological niches that favored cooperation over competition." General Okonkwo, standing nearby, raised an eyebrow. "That explains the rigid thinking." "Yes," agreed Kavan. "Our evolutionary paths created societies that value order and predictability. Yours created a species that thrives on adaptation and embraces chaos as opportunity." After the ceremony, a separate and more private meeting took place. Kavan met with President Martinez, General Okonkwo, and several key military and scientific leaders from Earth. The discussion was not recorded in the official peace documents. "There is a reason the Concordate has existed for so long," Kavan explained. "We have faced threats you cannot imagine, beings from other galaxies, entities that exist in multiple dimensions. Our ordered approach served us well against predictable enemies, but not against unpredictable ones," observed General Okonkwo. "Precisely. And there are forces beyond the edge of known space that are deeply unpredictable. The Concordate Council believes humanity's unique approach to warfare may be essential in future conflicts." President Martinez leaned forward. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A partnership. The Concordate provides stability and order throughout the galaxy. Humanity could serve as guardians against threats that require unconventional responses." 6 months later, the first joint human Concordate defense fleet departed Earth orbit. Commanded by Admiral William Francis and advised by Kavan, the fleet included ships from 12 different species, each contributing their unique strengths. On the observation deck of the Earth space station, Dr. Alan Parker watched the fleet depart alongside Ambassador Chen. "It's strange," he said. A year ago, they were trying to exterminate us for being unpredictable. Now they want us to be unpredictable on their behalf. Ambassador Chen smiled. The greatest strength isn't always winning the war. Sometimes it's changing how your opponent thinks. As the fleet disappeared into faster-than-light travel, they knew the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had proven itself not just as survivors, but as a force that could change even the most ancient and powerful civilizations. Their unpredictability in war had become their greatest asset in peace. And somewhere beyond the edge of known space, forces that had long avoided the ordered might of the Concordat were about to encounter something they had never faced before: the glorious, terrifying unpredictability of humanity.